This happened a week ago. I'm 32 and I'm a freelance journalist. I've been focusing on folklore for a few years now. I thought investigating the local legends of Deep Appalachia would be a good story. I rented a small cabin on the edge of a quiet town, surrounded by tall trees that felt alive. The place felt too quiet, like something was waiting. On my first evening, I was unpacking when I saw a flickering light deep in the woods. At first, I thought it was some campers, but when I stepped outside, the light vanished. I looked around, but I found nothing. A chill ran down my spine, but I brushed it off. Maybe it was just my imagination. Days went by, and I started to hear strange things. One night, I woke up to footsteps outside my cabin. My heart raced. I pulled the blanket tight around me. I thought it was just an animal, but the footsteps were slow and deliberate, like someone was nearby. I listened, thinking about peeking outside, but I didn't. The footsteps faded, leaving me cold. Another night, I heard faint music in the air. It drifted through the cabin, sweet but unsettling. I stood up and opened the door, hoping to find where it was coming from. As soon as I stepped outside, the music stopped. I listened hard, but all I heard was silence. I felt someone watching me. It was a gut feeling and I couldn't shake it. The locals warned me not to wander too far. One old man looked right at me and said, "There are things in those woods you don't want to meet." I laughed it off back then, but the warning started to weigh on my mind. What if there was something to it? By the end of the week, I felt a strange pull to explore deeper into the woods. I walked along twisted trails, the thick trees forming a dark canopy. It grew darker and darker, and I hesitated. I turned to head back, but then I heard the footsteps again. They were closer this time. I froze, I turned around, and there was nothing. Panic swept over me. I quickened my pace, feeling a wave of anxiety. Then I heard the music again, almost like it was calling me. I broke into a run, branches scratching my arms as I fled. I didn't stop until I was back at the cabin, breathless and terrified. That night I lay in bed, heart pounding. I tried to sleep, but the air felt thick. Then I heard a voice outside whispering, "Why are you here?" My blood ran cold. I jumped up and looked outside. I peered into the dark, straining my eyes, but saw nothing. Then I knew. I had stirred something I shouldn't have. I felt it in my bones. I couldn't go back to sleep. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there was waiting for me to make another move. I wanted to leave, but something deep inside held me there, maybe for answers or maybe out of sheer foolishness. I didn't know. The next morning I woke up groggy and restless. The sun cut through the cabin window, but its brightness felt sharp against my skin. I made coffee, trying to shake off the dread clinging to me like a cold shadow. But as I sipped, I realized I couldn't just leave, not yet. There was a story here, and it was almost taunting me. After breakfast, I took a deep breath and decided to visit the small general store in town. I needed to talk to someone who might know more about the legends. I walked down the quiet road, trees lining either side like guards. Each rustle made me jump, but I pressed on. As I entered the store, the bell over the door jingled. A few locals glanced at me but quickly returned to their conversations. I approached the counter where an older woman, her hair pulled back tightly, was arranging jars of honey. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound casual. "Do you know anything about the myths around these woods?" She paused and looked at me, her expression shifting from friendly to wary. "You shouldn't be out there alone," she said, her voice low. "People around here don't talk about it much, but there are stories." I leaned in, eager to hear. "What kind of stories?" "Things that don't belong. Lost souls, they say," she continued, glancing around as if afraid someone might overhear. "Some people go in and don't come out. Others come back changed." "What do you mean, changed?" My heart raced. "There's an old story about the whisperers. They lure you in, feed you tales, but everyone who listens can't unhear them." She paused, her eyes locking onto mine. You need to be careful. If they find you curious, they might not let you leave. The word whisperers hung in the air between us. I remembered the voice from last night. Have you ever seen one? I asked, almost breathless. No, and I plan to keep it that way. She handed me a small bottle of honey and said, Good luck, but you'll need more than that if you go back. I thanked her, but her warning echoed in my mind as I walked back to the cabin. It felt heavy with meaning. What had I stumbled into? Once I returned, I made a decision. I had to go back into the woods. I wanted to confront whatever it was that lingered there. I packed a small bag with water and my notebook. I needed to document everything. As I stepped outside, I felt the air shift. It was thick and electric. I took a deep breath and walked toward the path that led deeper into the trees. That's when I noticed something on the ground, a small carved figure shaped like a person. It was smooth and cold, like it had been here for years. My pulse quickened. I bent down to pick it up, wondering if it was some kind of offering or a warning. The moment my fingers brushed against it, I heard faint whispers swirling around me. I looked up, heart pounding. Then everything went dark. I opened my eyes, but darkness surrounded me. It felt heavy. I blinked a few times, trying to clarify the blurry edges of my vision. I couldn't tell how much time had passed. I pushed myself up, rubbing my eyes and straining to listen. There was no sound, just silence wrapping around me like a thick blanket. I fumbled to find my bag, panicking slightly. Had I dropped it? My heart raced. A surge of adrenaline shot through me, forcing me to focus. I felt the ground beneath me and my fingers brushed against the smooth figure. Grabbing it with both hands, I forced myself to stand. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed a faint glow ahead, flickering like a candle at the end of a long tunnel. I took a step forward, then another. The whispers returned, sharper this time, wrapping around my thoughts like tendrils. Come closer. They seemed to beckon, soothing yet unsettling. I broke into a jog, drawn toward the light. My breath came in quick bursts. As I neared the source, my feet crunched on dry leaves, the sound echoing ominously. I dodged branches that clawed at my arms, but I couldn't stop now. Whatever lay ahead was calling to me. Then I stepped into a small clearing. The light was from what looked like a circle of stones, glowing faintly and casting eerie shadows. In the center, more carved figures, dozens of them, surrounded a larger one that towered above the rest. This one was distinctly human, but with exaggerated features twisted and warped. I felt a chilling recognition. It resembled the figure I had found. Suddenly, I sensed movement behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing, just the stillness of the woods. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm. I needed to think clearly. Why are you here? The question broke the silence, sending a shiver down my spine. I whirled around, scanning the perimeter of the clearing, but saw no one. Show yourself, I shouted, my voice betraying my fear. A figure emerged from the shadows, partially hidden behind a tree. It was a man, weathered and ragged, with wild hair and a long coat that hung loosely on his gaunt frame. He watched me with eyes that seemed to gleam with a strange light. The whisperers have noticed you, he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. They don't like it when outsiders pry. His words sent a jolt through me. What do you know about them? I managed to ask, my courage waning. They listen, he said, taking a step closer, and they'll twist your thoughts, give you stories you can't forget. You either become one of them or suffer their wrath. I shook my head, unwilling to accept this. I need to leave. I can't stay here. He raised a finger, pointing toward the larger figure in the center. That's what they want. They'll make sure you never leave. If you value your life, you'll go now while you still can. Before I could respond, the whispers crescendoed, filling the air with urgency. A feeling of dread washed over me as I realized something had changed. The dark shapes within the trees shifted as if drawn to our presence. I took a step back, heart pounding. I knew I had to escape, but I also needed answers. Wait, what do I do? But when I looked back, the man was gone. Just darkness and whispering trees surrounded me. Then I heard it, the faintest cry echoing from deep within the woods. My thoughts raced. I had to get out, but I also had to know what that sound meant. What had I stumbled upon? I hesitated, torn between fleeing and following that haunting cry. The sound danced on the edges of my mind, a melody of fear and curiosity. I glanced back at the circle of stones. It loomed ominously, urging me to venture deeper into the woods. I tightened my grip on the smooth figure I had found earlier, feeling its weight anchor me. It was just a piece of stone, but it felt strangely important. Then I took a breath and started moving toward the sound. Each step felt like a dare, but a part of me was desperate for answers. The trees seemed to close in as I moved forward, their gnarled branches arching over me like skeletal hands. I pushed on, shivering under the scrutiny of the dark. The air was thick with tension, silence broken only by that distant cry, which grew sharper, more urgent. I stumbled over roots, almost losing my footing. "What are you?" I whispered, as if the forest could answer me. I strained to hear, to understand, to pinpoint its source. Then it came again, louder this time. A mournful, almost human plea that made my skin crawl. I stopped abruptly, suddenly aware that I wasn't alone. Shapes flitted in the corner of my vision, shadows moving swiftly between the trees. I held my breath, senses heightened. Fear clawed at my throat. The whispers swelled, wrapping around me like a noose. From the darkness, a small figure emerged, stumbling as it drew closer. A girl, no older than 10, with tangled hair and dirt-smudged cheeks. Her eyes darted with fear, locked on me. "Please," she gasped, breathless. "Help me. They're coming." "Who's coming?" I blurted out, urgency creeping into my voice. "The Whisperers. They want me." Her words spilled out like a torrent. Panic washed over her as she looked back into the trees. "If they get me, they'll take you too." I stepped closer, unsure if I should comfort her or run. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of indistinct voices surrounding us. I felt my heart race as the girl grabbed my hand, tugging me toward her. "We have to go now." I took a deep breath. It was one thing to face the unknown alone, but I couldn't abandon someone else to whatever hunted us. We sprinted deeper into the woods, branches snagging at our clothes. The cry echoed again, more frantic now. "This way," the girl shouted, leading me toward an opening between the trees. But just as I thought we had a chance, a figure loomed ahead, blocking our path. It was tall and shadowy, with elongated limbs that seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally in the dim light. My stomach dropped. The Whisperers. "Run!" I shouted, pushing the girl behind me. But a cold grip wrapped around my heart, a primal instinct warning me to turn back. The figure advanced slowly, deliberately, even as the whispers swelled to an almost deafening roar. I didn't know what to do. The woods felt suddenly alive, and I was terrified of what was about to happen next. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake in complete darkness. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust, but even then, the only thing I could see was a faint outline of trees. I felt the girl's hand gripping mine, and it grounded me. We weren't alone anymore. "Are you okay?" I whispered, not wanting to panic her further. I think so," she stammered, her voice trembling. "But we need to hide." There was urgency in her tone that made my chest tighten. I scanned the area for anything that might provide cover, but all I saw were shadows shifting in the dim light. "Over there." She pointed to a thick patch of bushes. Without thinking, I pulled her along, and we squeezed into the dense thicket. The branches scratched at my skin, and I winced, trying not to make a sound. We crouched low, hearts pounding. The whispers were still there, but they felt closer now, swirling around us like a storm. I dared a glance through the leaves. The figure that had blocked our path was looming just outside. It scanned the area with hollow eyes, its elongated fingers twitching. The air grew colder, and I shivered. Something inside me told me it could sense us, that it was more than just shadow and fear. "What is it?" I whispered. "What do they want?" "The whisperers take what they can't understand," she said, her voice barely a breath. "They want to know what you have." I instinctively looked down at the stone I clutched. Its smooth surface felt oddly warm, as if it were alive. "This?" I asked, confused. "Yes, I've seen others," she replied. "They burn bright against the darkness. The whisperers want to extinguish that light." Before I could question her further, a loud thud echoed. The figure had dropped to its knees, head tilted to the side as if listening. The whispers intensified, a furious chorus rising around us. I could almost hear them now, words unraveled in a maddening rhythm. My throat constricted with fear. Suddenly the girl's eyes widened in terror. "We have to move," she urged, tugging my arm. With adrenaline coursing through me, I nodded. We crawled out of the thicket and bolted in a direction I hoped led away from the figure. Branches whipped against my face, and the night air was thick with an unknown scent, musty and damp. As we ran, a flash of light burst through the trees ahead. I skidded to a halt, yanking the girl back. "What is that?" "I don't know," she stuttered, fear crackling in her voice. "But we can't stay here." I hesitated, weighing my options. The shadows behind us felt like they were closing in, their whispers gaining strength. The light flickered again, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. And then, without warning, a piercing shriek erupted from the darkness. It cut through us like a knife, and I knew we had to make a choice. We could either push on into the unknown where the light beckoned, or risk facing whatever was pursuing us. "Take my hand," I yelled, my voice breaking through the chaos. The choice felt impossible, but the girl slipped her hand into mine. Together, we darted towards the light, heart heavy with fear, and hope for what waited on the other side. As we sprinted toward the light, a sudden warmth enveloped us, wrapping around my body like a protective cloak. I could hear the whispers behind us, now more frantic and desperate. They clawed at my mind, urging me to turn back, to leave the light behind. With each step, the brightness grew. It was almost blinding, but I pushed forward, dragging the girl along. I could feel the energy coming from what lay ahead, a pulsing force that seemed to reach out and pull us in. "Do you see it?" I gasped, squinting against the brightness. "Yes, keep running," she shouted, her voice shaking with both fear and determination. The shadows began to shift again, billowing like smoke. For a moment I felt a sense of regret. What if the light was a trap? But the thought vanished as we broke through the last of the trees and stumbled into a clearing. The sight before us took my breath away. A massive stone structure stood in the center, illuminated by an eerie glow. Its walls were carved with strange symbols, twisting and turning in ways I couldn't comprehend. A pulsing light radiated from the doorway, gently inviting us inside. "Is this safe?" I asked, feeling an instinctive pull to stay outside. "They won't follow us in," the girl replied, her voice more confident now. "We need to find out what's inside." Before my doubt could stop me, I reached for her hand again. Together we approached the entrance. When we reached the archway, a wave of energy washed over us, and I felt a sense of belonging I couldn't explain. I stepped inside first. The air was thick but warm, a stark contrast to the chill outside. Small points of light floated around like fireflies, illuminating the interior. As my eyes adjusted, I spotted ancient artifacts and tablets lining the walls, each inscribed with symbols similar to those outside. "Look," the girl gasped, inching towards a stone pedestal. On it rested a larger version of the stone I had found. but this one glistened with vibrant colors, its energy thrumming like a heartbeat. My heart raced at the sight. Maybe it could help us understand what was happening. As I reached out to touch it, the whispers from outside grew louder. They surged like a tidal wave, vibrating through the air. Panic gripped me. "What are they doing?" I asked, stepping back instinctively. "They're angry. They know where we are," she cried, eyes darting to the entrance. Suddenly the walls around us trembled as shadows began to seep in through the doorway. The air felt heavy, the energy shifting from warm to icy in an instant. My chest constricted with dread as I realized we didn't have much time. Before I could react, the girl grabbed my arm. "We need to move. There might be something here that can help us." Her determination reignited my resolve. I nodded, focusing on the glowing stone once more. "What if it holds the answers?" "That's what we need to find out," she shouted. Before I could process it all, I turned back toward the inside of the structure. A shiver ran down my spine as I now noticed the flickering shadows closing in, and I felt a new urgency crash over me. Just then, the whispers transformed into a deafening roar. That's when I saw it. An elongated shadow slipping through the entrance, and it was coming for us. I froze, the shadow stretching and contorting into an amorphous figure. It moved quickly, lurching out of the light and into the dimness of the structure. My pulse raced as I grabbed the girl's wrist, ready to bolt. "Back!" I shouted, pushing her toward the stone pedestal. "We need to hide." "Wait!" she protested, her eyes fixed on the shadow now creeping closer. There was something in her gaze that demanded I listen. "We can't run. We have to find out what it wants." The shadow swirled, gaining shape. A dark face emerged, with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light around it. I felt a pulse of fear in my gut, but the girl's gaze held a flicker of courage. "It's not just a shadow," she whispered, taking a step forward. It's alive." I could feel the energy in the room shifting, vibrating around us. As the creature approached, its form flickered and twisted. Suspicion gnawed at me. What if interacting with it meant inviting danger? "What do you want?" the girl called out, determination in her voice. The shadow paused, as if considering her words. I watched, breathless, as the figure morphed, traces of light peeking through its darkness. It shifted closer, and I could almost hear a voice, low and raspy, echoing in my mind. "Help," it whispered. "What?" I asked, confusion swirling in my mind. "Help with what?" Suddenly memories. I recognized some of the symbols from the walls. They flared to life around us. Glimpses of faces, moments of pain and isolation swirled like a tempest, spinning from the creature to the stone pedestal. A sense of urgency surged in the space, pulling my thoughts into focus. The girl seemed to be connecting too. "It's trapped," she surmised, her voice steady. "These symbols, they're like a prison." The shadow lunged toward us, and I felt a surge of dread. But instead of fear, the girl stepped in front of me, her resolve strengthening the moment. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice cutting through the chaos. In response, the creature extended a dark limb, reaching toward the glowing stone. I didn't know if we should follow its lead or avoid it altogether. But something told me we had to act. "Let's do it together," I said, heart pounding. We reached for the stone, our hands brushing against its surface. A surge of energy shocked through me, sharper than before. The symbols on the walls lit up, resonating with power. I gasped as a wave of emotion overwhelmed my senses, an understanding that we weren't just here to escape. We were part of something much greater. The creature let out a wail, not of anger but of yearning. It needed our help, or so it seemed. The shadows convened around us, encroaching, threatening, but the stone pulsed with our combined energy. "Hold on!" I yelled, gripping the girl's hand tighter. Whatever happens now, we're in this together. With a final surge of force, the stone erupted in light. The shadows wailed louder, shaking the walls of the structure. I squeezed my eyes shut, but between the crackling of energy and the shadows swirling in fury, I felt an abrupt change. Then everything went dark. I blinked into the silence, feeling the sudden chill wrap around me like a blanket soaked in ice. My heart raced as I tried to piece together what had just happened. Had we succeeded? Or had we just unleashed something far worse? Are you okay? The girl's voice broke through the stillness. I turned to her, relieved to see she was unharmed, but confusion still clouded my thoughts. I think so. What just happened? The darkness felt thick, stifling. It was as if we had been pulled from one reality into another. But now, we stood alone, suspended in a void. I couldn't even tell if we were still within the structure or outside of it entirely. There were no shadows, no symbols, just a heavy silence that almost felt alive. I don't know, she replied, looking around, her brow furrowed. But I think we're still connected to that creature somehow. It might be trying to communicate. We took a tentative step forward. The air felt charged, like before a storm, and with each movement, I half expected something to jump out at us. But there was nothing, just the thick curtain of darkness. Let's move, I said, steeling my resolve. We can't just stand here. As we trudged forward, a faint light glowed in the distance. My pulse quickened. I felt a mix of hope and dread. Is that? I whispered. It's coming from over there, she said, pointing ahead. We should check it out. With every step, the glow grew stronger, illuminating faint outlines of walls that seemed to emerge from the shadows. Any remnants of fear began to fade, replaced by a curiosity that bubbled inside me. But then, as the light began to take form, I felt a strange hesitation. Wait, I said, tugging at her arm. What if it's another trap? But before she could respond, the light abruptly flickered, and the long shadows in the corners of the room surged forward, twisting like fingers reaching out for us. The air thrummed with tension, a warning. Now we really need to go, I yelled, spotting the sinister ghost of the dark figure lurking at the edges of the light. We turned to run, but two figures stepped out from the shadows. They were cloaked in darkness, their features indistinct, and I felt the air grow thick with danger. Stay where you are, one of them commanded, its voice cold and sharp. The girl instinctively stepped in front of me again. What do you want? She shouted, standing her ground. The shadow is ours, the second figure hissed. You are meddling with forces beyond your understanding. I felt a surge of anger mix with my fear. It's not yours, I shouted back. It needs our help. The figures exchanged a glance, or at least I thought they did. It was hard to tell in that half-light. Suddenly they lunged forward, darkness spilling from their cloaks like smoke. That's when I saw it, I murmured, panic setting in as I recognized the shadow behind them. It was the same form that had tried to reach for the stone. A desperate thought surged through me. We can save it, I yelled, a plan forming as the figures closed in. I grabbed the girl's wrist and made a break for the emerging light, not sure what awaited us. But I was certain of one thing. Whoever these figures were, they wouldn't let us go without a fight. A fight we were clearly not prepared for. Before the shadows swallowed us again, I took a deep breath and plunged forward. The moment we charged into the light, I held my breath, waiting for something to strike. But instead of pain, I felt a rush of warmth envelop us. The light became blinding, so I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, we were in a small room, crystalline walls sparkling like stars. It was disorienting and beautiful. But as my gaze flicked around, I realized it wasn't entirely safe. In the center of the room hovered a translucent figure, the shadow creature. Only now it looked less threatening. The darkness that had been a part of it swirled like fog, and its form shifted as if trying to solidify. Stay back, the girl warned, but I took a step closer. "It's not attacking," I said, looking over my shoulder. The cloaked figures hadn't followed us through the light. The creature turned its gaze on us. I could almost feel it reaching out with something like a thought, a sense of deep longing. What do you want?" I asked, my heart pounding. The girl stood beside me, legs trembling, but her eyes glinted with defiance. "If you want our help, you need to show us," she shouted. For a second, nothing changed. The creature hovered in the center, the fog tightening around it. Then, suddenly, images began to flicker in the space around us, visions racing past like a movie unspooling from a projector. I gasped as memories flooded into view. A forest, a towering cliff, and the very stone we'd found at the beginning. But there was more, too. I saw flashes of the cloaked figures trying to harness the creature's power, attempting to control it. "What is this?" I whispered, feeling my stomach twist. "I think it's trying to tell us," the girl replied, narrowing her eyes at the display. "Those figures are the ones who captured it. They want to use it." The creature pulsed, and an echo of sadness swirled in the room. I felt a surge of empathy. It was a prisoner in this strange dimension, and we might be the key to its freedom. "I know how to help you," I called out, my voice steadying. I stepped forward, reaching out toward the flickering images. "You need to be free from them." Just then the walls trembled, and the light flickered violently. The room began to collapse around us. "What's happening?" I shouted, gripping the girl's shoulder. "There's not much time," she yelled back, her face pale. "We need to find a way to break the bond." I scanned the room, desperation igniting my mind. I spotted a stone pedestal holding a glowing orb at its center, just like the one we found in the dark. "That must be it. It's a connection point." Before I could finish my thought, the air erupted with a deafening roar. I turned, just as the cloaked figures pierced through the light barrier. In that moment, I realized they hadn't been far behind us. "Foolish children," one of them spat. "You dare." The earth quaked beneath our feet, and I felt the weight of danger closing in all around us. The creature shuddered, its form starting to dissolve back into shadow. "I will not let them take you," I cried, rushing toward the pedestal. "Wait!" the girl shouted. "What are you doing?" "Trust me," I yelled as I reached for the orb. I felt a jolt of energy arc through me, and then everything went dark. When the world brightened again, I was alone, and the only thing that remained was silence. I blinked into the faint light, confusion flooding my senses. I felt the cool air against my skin, and as my vision cleared, I found myself back in the clearing with the circle of stones. The remnants of the glowing pedestal and the mysterious structure had vanished, leaving nothing but the ghosts of memories drifting in my mind. The whispers were gone, but the echoes of their urgency still lingered. "Where am I?" I murmured, my heart racing. I was alone. The girl, the creature, even the cloaked figures, gone. I ran a trembling hand through my hair and took a cautious step forward, glancing around the expansive woods. Everything felt eerily calm now, devoid of the oppressive shadows that had haunted me prior. I looked down at my palms and found the carved figure nestled within my grasp, the last connection to what I had experienced. How had I escaped? Had I truly broken the bond that held the creature captive? I wondered if it was free, if it was safe. What if I was simply a fool for venturing back? An overwhelming urge to run surged within me. I turned on my heel and sprinted toward the path leading back to the cabin, branches whipping against my arms. Each footfall felt heavier, laden with doubt. I didn't dare stop to look back, fearing that whatever I had unleashed would take form again, perhaps angry for helping its captor escape. When I finally reached the cabin, I flung the door open and stumbled inside. The comforting smell of earth and wood soothed me, but it couldn't shake the memories of my encounter. I closed my eyes, trying to calm the storm of thoughts racing in my mind. Did I truly mess with forces beyond my understanding, or had I been a catalyst for change? I moved to the dusty little table, shaking as I set down the carved figure. It felt unusually warm. I took a deep breath as I sat in the worn chair, staring through the window at the dark, looming woods. Something about them still felt charged, alive, though I couldn't decipher if that energy was good or evil. Outside, the first hints of twilight brushed the sky in heavy blues and purples, the sun swallowed by the mountains. I thought of the townsfolk, those who had warned me. Did they know more than they let on? Was the folklore merely a way to protect themselves, or was there a deeper truth embedded in their words? The quiet of the cabin weighed heavily on my heart, as I couldn't shake the image of the girl's terrified face. Had she gotten free? Was she safe? A sense of guilt wove through my thoughts. I left her in the midst of the chaos. Shivers ran down my spine, and though the immediate threat felt diminished, a quiet unease lingered. I glanced down at the stone, then outside at the trees swaying softly in the evening breeze. I would leave tomorrow, but as I packed, I couldn't help but wonder. The stories, the legends, the whisperers. How many others would find themselves lost within those woods, lulled by curiosity and blinded by light? As I moved about the cabin, I found myself glancing back into the depths of the forest, half anticipating the flicker of light or the whispers to return. Maybe I had escaped, but I knew the woods still held their secrets. What they truly wanted, how they worked, and what I had unleashed would continue beyond my understanding. In the resulting stillness, I felt the weight of uncertainty flood over me. I might have left, but a part of me would always remain caught in the darkness of those woods, and I doubted I'd ever truly know the nature of what I had encountered.